welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Maegan-Leigh. I'm a second year journalism student at CPUT. Okay guys, so today we'll be looking at a news story broadcasted by two different news channels. So the story we'll be looking at was broadcasted on the 21st of August 2020. It's a story in which the National Student Financial Aid Scheme defunds 5,000 students based on a tax report they received from Nsfas that their household income is above the 350,000 Rand threshold. So the first broadcasting station we'll be looking at is the SABC. The heading reads, Nsfas defunds 5,000 students for the 2020 academic year. The heading accurately reflects what the story is about, and the heading interests audiences because we would obviously want to know why these students are being defunded.
The National Student Financial Aid Scheme (Nsfas) has confirmed that a total of 5,000 students who were funded for the 2020 academic year have been recently unfunded. A recent financial information obtained from the South African Revenue Services (SARS) has revealed that these students declared total household family income was above 350,000 threshold. We talk about this now with Nsfas Administrator Dr. Randall Carolson, who joins me now live via Skype. Good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the SABC News channel.
Thank you.
All right, so
good to have you.
Thank you so much indeed. So does this mean that these students had actually lied about their financial status?
So what it means is that the data that they provided us proved to be incorrect when we checked with SARS. I would not go so far as to say that they lied, because we're giving them the opportunity to explain why they have a difference. And then if the explanation is not satisfactory, we will recover the money. It's in some cases it might be totally justified. People might have lost their jobs, and the data that we got from to validate against might be slightly out of kilter. But there are such severe cases of wealthy people that got funded by Nsfas that we had to unfund it, and we had to tell them that they must provide us with evidence that we should reinstate their funding.
And I think the question really is, how did and why did that happen? Didn't Nsfas verify this before they could fund these students?
So when I started at Nsfas 2 years ago as administrator, the system that Nsfas used was to validate data against credit bureau data. Now, credit bureau data is also self-declarations. So in other words, you tell the credit bureau who earns what in your family, and on that basis, they then form a profile of you. So that process was totally unreliable, and in fact, it was open to abuse. And therefore, the only reliable way to determine household income is through income tax data, because then you can also pick up income beyond just salary. You can also pick up investment income or rental income. And we have found cases where very wealthy people qualified for Nsfas based on low salaries, but they had actually quite high, large investment income. And the amount of complaints that we received from fellow students through our hotlines confirmed that, and therefore we had to act.
All right. So 5,000 is a large number, Dr. Carolson, and this will surely impact on these students. We understand, however, that they can challenge their funding status.
Absolutely. We gave them 2 weeks to respond.
So we ask ourselves, what is the newsworthiness of the story being reported? It's important to be reported on the news because Nsfas is a national bursary scheme that many students depend on, and it questions how Nsfas verifies the information because they were funding students who did not deserve the money. When looking at the way the SABC reported the news story, and the most effective parts of the news story is the fact that they had an interview with the administrator of Nsfas, so the audience receives information from the organization itself. He explains how this could have possibly happened and the process going forward after the 14-day period in which the students who were defunded can petition. Looking at the less effective ways in which they reported the story is the fact that there were not much visuals, so when the audience watches the story being broadcasted, they won't be engaged with the story for too long. The interviewer also spoke more on the Nsfas organization and not much upon the students that were affected by the fact that they were defunded mid-year. The journalist remained neutral throughout the entire interview, but she did pose a question asking whether the students lied on the application, giving the audience a negative idea about those students. She also asked the administrator whether Nsfas properly checks the applications, giving the idea that there's negligence amongst the organization. The next broadcasting station we'll be looking at is Enca. The main heading reads Education Inequality, with the subheading Nsfas scraps funding for 5,000 students.
The National Student Financial Aid Scheme has halted funding for 5,000 students for this year. This after SARS alerted the scheme that the students come from homes with an income of more than 350,000 rand threshold. The students have 2 weeks to petition the decision. Let's take you to ENCA's Tseho Moahi, who is covering that story for us. So, Tseho, it seems the Nsfas is doing a bit of due diligence, and in the process are finding that the scheme has been funding people that they are not supposed to be funding?
Absolutely, Tula. So from what we understand, after a brief conversation that I had with the Nsfas administrator, he says that they are now working with SARS to ensure that the people that they are funding actually deserve this funding. They are concerned that there are some people whose families and the household exceeds the 350,000 rand threshold. However, he is saying that with the 14-day period that they have given to the students to respond and to say whether or not circumstances have changed, then they need to do this within the 14-day period. And quite interestingly, to us, I did speak to some of the students who were told that they'll be defunded by Nsfas, and they are saying that one of the students that I spoke to mentioning to me that the only thing that has really changed is that his mom actually got an increase, and the difference is then an extra 137 rand from what she was actually earning, and that then increases it according to Nsfas. So the administrator really also just saying that they are concerned that they are funding people that actually are able to afford school fees and to afford paying for university fees. But he was very sympathetic during the interview that we had, also stating that as much as they understand that this has been done during the year, so mid-year, he is very sympathetic and really has urged people to ensure that they respond to the 14-day call and really just send through the relevant documentation.
And you've been engaging with student organizations, haven't you? What are they saying?
Absolutely. So the student body, SASCO, saying that they are very disappointed in Nsfas for doing this mid-year. They're also calling that the Minister, Bladen Zimande, actually creates a new board, that there's a new board that needs to be appointed for Nsfas. But they are also saying that the threshold needs to actually be increased to about 600,000 rand. But let's just take a listen to what Atenkosi from SASCO had to say.
We feel that it's very opportunistic of him to want to do this at this time when there's an uncertainty in the sector, when there's uncertainty about the academic year. Some students are preparing for their exams now, semester exams. Some are awaiting registration, second semester registrations. Now you receive an SMS or an email or whatever that says you have been unfunded by Nsfas. You're already going through your stress of exams. You're already going through COVID-19 implications and complications. We are already going through your family crisis. You're already being frustrated by e-learning. Now, on top of it all, you must now stress about new struggles of renting, or your parent must start stressing about rent, tuition fee, must start stressing about new things now that must pay for you. And we feel that it's very inhuman.
I'm wondering, Tseho, that looking at the figures that we're talking about, the threshold of 350,000 rand per household, and the example that you were giving, that some of the students you've been talking to, basically the parent would have received an increase that raises their income by 150 rand per month. That's not something that then suggests all of a sudden that you'll be able to afford some of our university fees. I'm wondering to what extent this talks to this issue that we've always talked about in this country of the so-called missing middle.
Absolutely, Tulas. I mean, that is quite an interesting bit, because you'd remember that there are a lot of students who actually cannot afford to go to university at this stage. And I mean, just that one student that I spoke to, he's got 2 other siblings. He's got a twin sibling and also a sister. And the mother then is currently paying for the twin sibling. So the issue of the missing middle, it feels like it will be one that we'll be continuously speaking about, because it seems those people continuously are just left out, you know. But the Nsfas really saying that they are trying their best to ensure that no one is left out, that those that deserve this funding are actually able to get it.
Yeah, thank you so much. She's watching that story around the Nsfas, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, basically halting funding for some 5,000 students that they say have exceeded the threshold for assistance.
Already we see that the news station has taken a certain angle in the way in which they report the story, with using the words education inequality. Within South Africa, inequality is a major problem, and this attracts the attention of the audience, as they obviously want to know what the story is about. Within the heading, they use the word scraps, which means discard or remove from service. This is a very harsh and insensitive term compared to defunding students. The most effective part in the way in which ENCA reported the story is the fact that they got feedback from a journalist who worked closely with the organizations and students who were affected. They also received a video from a member of SASCO explaining the challenges that students are already facing throughout this year, and now this is being added onto their plate. We received feedback from students who are directly affected by this issue, explaining that circumstances have not changed and they have not necessarily lied on their applications. We now move on to the less effective parts in the way in which they reported the story. Is the fact that there were not much visuals, and that they used the words education inequality as if it was a deliberate action from the organization of Nsfas, but the administrator does explain that he is very sympathetic towards the students who were affected. When we look at the 2 different news stations and the way in which they report the story, we see that SABC has taken the side of the Nsfas organization, explaining how this could have happened, and ENCA takes the side of the students of those who were affected. The way in which you report a news story is very important, because you need to think about your target audience. The target audience for this story was students who get funded by Nsfas and the parents of those students. This is obviously challenging for the both of them, because within the difficult time that our country is in right now, they need to think of alternative ways to receive money. If you guys have any opinions about how the news stories are being reported, you can always leave something in the comment section. If this is the first time joining my YouTube channel, don't forget to subscribe. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and thank you guys for watching.